Welcome to week 5, where we will be covering chapter 4, stress, illness, and the immune system. So this is a quick overview of the week to kind of help keep you on track and make you aware of what is coming up. The first thing that you're going to want to do is check out the objectives for the chapter. I have a podcast, if you click here, that goes over all the major things that I want you to know for this chapter. You'll notice that it follows along nicely with the flow of the chapter, and sort of I just point out kind of the importance of each of these things and how to be sort of looking at these and taking these in, which I think will be helpful. Great idea to do that before you go ahead and dive in to the reading for chapter 4. You don't have any reading in the other stress book this week by McGonigal, so you just have this chapter this week. You can look over the slides that go along with the chapter, and again, I talked with somebody this week about how to be using these slides. And so I just want to reiterate the best way to do that is to, if you can, print them out, have them next to you while you're reading the books, so that way you can take notes the old-fashioned way. I mean, I really am a strong believer in written notes. I know we have computers now, and you can highlight and cut and paste, and those are all great time savers. But really, to understand the material well, writing it out is sometimes the best method to committing it to memory. And then you actually have those nice slides, and you can compare them to the objectives here. Did you get everything? Did you understand everything? Is there anything that you missed? The tests test you on, anything, any content from the chapters. So if you're breezing over the content, or you're not really zoning in on definitions and how concepts relate to one another, kind of like micro zoom right in on each concept and definition, and then span out to the macro view of, well, how does this all relate to each other, and how do these things connect? Those are the two kind of prongs to understanding each chapter. So having those notes next to you can kind of give you the space to do that and help it flow and help it kind of make sense a little bit. So that would be my strategy for you for that. I put in the video again this week. This is the same video from last week. Last week I wanted you looking at it through the lens of just, how does stress affect us? What are some studies that talk about the effects of stress on health? This week, if you want to watch it again or go back to certain parts, I would recommend that, and I would recommend doing so through the lens of the immune system, right? Because this week we're covering the immune system and the effects of stress specifically on the immune system. What does it do to the immune system? How does our immune system react when we're under stress? What happens? What are the key players, right? And as we're going through the objectives here, you've got a ton of definitions. I mean, this is just a chapter that's packed with words you've probably never seen before. So really taking the time to understand how each of these play a role in stress affecting the immune system. And the video does a really great job, actually, of mentioning many of those. It talks about natural killer cells. It talks about immunosuppression. It talks about a lot of the concepts that I've put up here: monocytes, lymphocytes, and the immune response. What happens when the immune system attacks itself? How do we gain immunity? All of those factors. So it would be a really great idea to watch it again. I honestly think that you're going to get a lot out of that, and that it will be time well spent in a good preparation for your next test. And as I put here, this video is really essential for chapters 3 through 5, which all talk about different aspects of stress and its effect on the body. The only other thing you have for this week is the discussion. I really want to zone in here for just a minute. You guys are doing a great job in terms of content. I see that a lot of you are putting a lot of thought into your responses, trying to develop those really well. I think that there could be a little more work spent on replying to others, making sure you're integrating in the chapter. When you're responding to somebody on a post that they made, how can you tie in this stuff, right? Do you have an opportunity to talk about psychoneuroimmunology? Do you have a chance to mention the role of any of these here, or a scale that's used, or explain a concept like secondary gains? Is there any opportunity in a person's post where you can tie some of that in and show me you're taking what they wrote and expanding it out to maybe say more than what they said, or give different examples to what they said? That's kind of what I'm looking for in your replies to other people. And as you do that, make sure you're citing the chapter, right? So you want to cite Harrington and the year. You do not want to be using direct quotes. That's kind of like a no-no in research. I know you're probably taught to do that in English. This is not English. This is like scientific writing, right? So you'll learn that that's really important in the sciences, is we don't use direct quotes. We take ideas and we put them in our own words, our own thinking. What is your interpretation of what you read? Tell me. And then cite where the idea came from by citing Harrington, right? Then that way you're not dealing with page numbers or anything, and you're showing me you have a good interpretation of the material. So keep that in mind. I put the cite as you write instructions because some of you are still having issues citing in APA format, which is necessary for this class. Being that this is a 200 level psych class, the expectation is that you're using your APA citations for the class. So I've given you just quick instructions to try to make it super easy for you. You don't really need to go to any other site to figure this out. It's all right there. Just make sure you check that as you're citing. Make sure too that when you do your discussion, you're not attaching it as a separate document. That becomes really cumbersome for me if I have to go in and open separate documents in a lot of people's posts. It just takes a long time. So you want to cut and paste, into the discussion thread, your response. A few of you had weirdly formatted discussions. I don't know what's causing that, but if you got that reply from me last week when I gave you feedback on your discussion, please contact CIT and find out, is it a computer issue? Is it the browser you're using? I'm not sure what the issue is really, and it could be something different for each person. But if you could find out for me and make sure to format it correctly this week, it just makes it so much easier to read. Rather than if it's coming out as one long line that just keeps going and going and going, it's really hard to grade. So those are kind of like the kinks worked out for the discussion. In terms of the material on this week's discussion, what I want you to answer first is, if you were to conduct a study measuring the effects of stress on the development of cancer, what type of research method would you use? So go back to the beginning of the chapter, take a look at kind of what those research methods are that Harrington discusses being used most in health research, and tell me what you would pick, and what would be the advantages and disadvantages of the method you picked, and how, through your method, would you determine if stress played a role in the immunological development, that is a mouthful, of cancer, right? So really the psychoneuroimmunology of cancer, right? A lot of people out there are doing research that sometimes makes substantiated claims as to the connection between cancer and stress, sometimes not. The research is mixed. So what would make for good research? Of the good research out there that exists, linking our immune response to cancer. What kinds of methods are used? Okay, so this is talked about towards the beginning of the chapter. You can go back through and kind of take a look at that. But this is, I'm expecting a little bit of ingenuity here. Yes, you're going to be integrating the chapter, but you're picking a method you think would be good and why. And then for the second one, here's where we're going to get some individual differences too, which will be interesting to see this week, is what are the top 3 strategies that you could employ in your own life to bolster your immune system against the effects of stress? Okay, what things could you do that would help your immune system, particularly in times of stress? And why did you choose these 3? Because there's many, many, many strategies. And how could you best implement these strategies into your life in a practical way that you'd actually do them, right? So it's great to say things like, oh, I would exercise and I would eat right. But how would you do that? You know, how would you make that practical for you? What would that look like? Would that mean running 3 times a week? Is that practical for you? Would that mean, you know, a diet of only bread and water? You know, it's fun to think about the things that will help boost our immune system, but not if we're not really going to do them, right? So we got to think of ways that we could actually implement in our lives today that would make a good difference, maybe in the long term for our immune system and its response against, you know, illness. So that is the discussion for this week. Again, you're really only using the Harrington book. And then next week we'll be looking at the next chapter of the Upside of Stress book. So that wraps up the week 5. Again, if you have questions or need help or clarification on anything, please email me, right? Or you can even see me during office hours through Zoom. I'm pretty full Monday. I have pretty much back-to-back appointments set up. Wednesday is still pretty open. So during my office hours from 2 to 3:30, if you'd like to Zoom chat, please let me know ahead of time so I can schedule you in. I really like to do it on an individual basis because then I can give you what you need one-on-one. I found that to be actually a benefit during this COVID season and to meeting online with students, is that some students that would never have come into office hours are actually joining in on Zoom, and I'm helping work with them one-on-one, and I can explain a concept in more detail or just questions that you have in general, whatever that might be. So please just keep that in mind. And again, if you feel more comfortable just emailing me questions, that's fine too. But I'm here for you guys. So hope you have a good week and hope to see you.